So we'll be looking at what the morphic field is, what vibration is, and no better place to start than with the magic wind gong. So if I can invite you just to allow the vibrations to come into your energy fields. Don't listen to it, don't do anything with it, just allow the vibrations to meet your energy field. So how was that? Good? Now for even something more powerful. Our voice, so if I can invite you to stand. Just put everything down, let everything worldly go. And a big R. Come on. So open throat, open mouth, open heart, nice deep breath. Just keep sounding and let the sound go where it wants to go. Okay. So vibration is what holds knowledge, it holds information, it holds the codes, the genetic codes of everything that exists in the universe. So we'll be looking at a bit of the sacred geometry that is kind of the mechanics of this all. And this is somewhere I was just recently communicating with the morphic field of the herd, the horses, incredible intelligence, and how they can connect from one country to another to actually speak to you. Human beings do it as well, but we don't kind of like trust it as much. I was at speaking at the Feng Shui Society, the British Society of Dowsers a few weeks ago. And on the afternoon I arrived, the client had booked my flight over to this site. And immediately I got taken out energetically, real headaches, serious migraines, which I never ever get. And we'll come back to this in a moment because, as we go through the slideshow, it was to do with the connection of the field and what was happening on a global scale in another country, on another continent, and the stories that were running on the land that was affecting the people's lives, their business, their relationship, everything was being affected. The house itself did not need feng shui. That was not the issue. It was the stories running on the land that were ancient, that had not been resolved. My message at the moment, as Raymond says, I'm into some pretty cutting edge, crazy things, but it is very much about what is the story that is running? How do you get right back to that 0 point, the seed point of what actually holds the energetic code? And if we can get to that point, and we can only get to that if we are actually totally connected to consciousness, in our own center, fully connected to universal source, that we can actually touch that soul of the building and unravel a story or the soul of the land. And once we find that, the feng shui does itself. Yeah? So it's going right back to core level. So communication is through sound, the geometry of space. All space holds geometry. Some of you may, I certainly see geometry in my psychic eye. And when I look at a room that needs space clearing, it's very foggy. I was in Sweden last weekend teaching, and we did a Friday night, just a couple of hours group, and the energy by the end of the evening was really high vibration. You could feel that kind of sparkle in the air. Then we went down to a lower room, which was a little bit kind of heavy on the energy, a little bit on the dark side. And we looked into the room, and it literally, everybody could see fog. That's how it appeared. So, so depending on your connection with the energetics of space, but all space carries that. When we look at sound, language, here we've got the Sanskrit alphabet, one of the purest languages that exists here on this planet, anyway. And it all comes down to code. Symbols are codes. So the couple of friends I met over there, and great communicators. And even now in my dreams, the horses, the llamas are talking and communicating. So, so if we jump back to some ancient times, Delphi in Greece, has anyone been there? Yeah? Very, very powerful feng shui site, good form school with, you know, the mountains around, you know, the dragon, the tiger, and so on. And Apollo's temple, where the Pythia would sit and actually draw in knowledge from the etheric field that holds the Akashic records, the morphic field to actually give fortune telling, whatever you want to call it, to the leaders of the country who came to get advice on psychic matters and matters of war. So where's all this knowledge held? Where is it coming from? Yeah? All knowledge exists in totality right now. Anything you want to know about, past, present, or future, exists in the Akashic records, in the fields around us. All we have to do is tune into that frequency, that code. So energetic codes are really kind of an important part of the whole feng shui process. And to do that, again, you have to work from your total center to be able to then reach out and plug in to this field that carries the information. Now, this is an interesting site in Kingston, anyone who knows Kingston, and this is a new development, well, some 10, 15 years ago, and just about here, one of my clients, and I don't know if you can see the exciting, good feng shui of the bedroom there, but something traumatic happened. Does anyone know on that site? This is the site we're just looking at, and I was up on Kingston Hill where I lived. We don't have sound on this, but you can see what happened. And in fact, my kind of energetic connection to this site tells me there was a stone circle there in ancient times. It was then a power station. It is linked to King's Road, Kingston Hill, King's Road, Chelsea, and comes straight through to Westminster. Coincidence? So when a trauma like that happens on a site, that memory is locked into the morphic field, into the energetic matrix. So anything that is built on that site afterwards is going to be affected. is going to have devastation effects, illnesses, cancers. This is right at the core. And so my message is about getting right to the heart of the traumatic events, anything that happened in the past that is held in the field. And of course, this is truly what Feng Shui is about at its core level. Hasn't totally come through at this level with the texts from and the teachings from the East, but this is my connection to it and connection to ancient times. So this is another client in Glastonbury or just outside, and you'll recognize the tour. So this is a view from her window, and this is a view from inside her window. So as toilets have been mentioned already, we have quite a traumatic effect that happened on that. But this is the sort of thing that will carry in the field, and it doesn't matter how much you tell someone to clear their clutter. It's about realigning the inner matrix of the person. Feng Shui is about people, not buildings alone. It is about the correlation, the relationship we have with our buildings. And this is easily forgotten when we're working this subject. So harmonic codes embedded in the soul of a building. When an architect designer starts to create the concept of a building, that is when the seed form, the soul of a building, is planted on that land. It holds the energy, it holds the code, and depending on how pure the architect is, will determine the quality of the soul of that particular building. We've heard the phrase, a mad architect will create madness in the people who live in those buildings. That's where it comes from, as well as all the other levels of stuff that happens in life, you know, in a building that builds up layers and layers and layers. But when I work to regress, literally regress a building through its years, through its layers, through its history, everything that's happened, space clearing, I actually don't like the word space clearing, it's more space alignment, because what you're doing is actually bringing the energetic fields into alignment with universal law, universal principle, universal sacred geometry. When that is in alignment, energy can flow freely. When it's at the golden mean harmonic, which we'll come on to in a moment, everything flows and energy cannot get stuck. The golden mean ratio is the only geometry that has no stress at the node points. This is why we have issues with corners in Feng Shui, because we've got those standing waves, and at the corner you get the energetic eddies disturbing the waves. The golden mean doesn't do that. We are created from golden mean harmonic, therefore we have a free-flowing double DNA helix, our fingers, body parts are all golden mean. We are connected totally to universal design. So if that flows through us, through our buildings, energy can't get stuck in the building, energy can't get stuck in us, therefore we cannot get ill. When that golden mean vibration starts to cram up, lock up in the energetic field, we get sick. Our buildings get sick. Our land gets sick. So this is a clip out of the China movie, which I have for sale next door, which is a trip we did in '96. And this is the Ming tombs, and of course, in a perfect Feng Shui landscape, horseshoe formation. And the Chinese honored their ancestors. Why? Why did they build the graves where they did? The soil, the land, the energy of the earth. Certain orientations connected to cosmic, connected to astrology, to birth dates. All this is absolutely crucial in honoring the ancestors. Do we do that every day now? Not a lot. But major part of Feng Shui. And if we upset the ancestors, what happens? Who's ever upset an ancestor? Oh, I've upset many, I tell you. We'll come back to this in a moment, because you can work with the ancestors and they actually come forward to work with you if you call on them. Very, very powerful. If you upset them, they can cause a lot of devastation. So apparently we're told that there's chaos in the universe, is that right? If you believe it to be so, then there is. Chaos is a point of view. It's actually a duality. Order. Do we have order in our lives? Yeah, sometimes. Of course, as human beings, we take these universal laws and we embed them into the buildings. This knowledge, this code of sacred geometry, is actually held in the morphic field. There is pure and total intelligence in the universe. We don't go from amoeba to fully realized galactic beings by accident. That knowledge is already there. So if that upsets you Darwinian people, tough. I mean, as far as my connection goes, there is total knowledge out there. And the more I work with people, buildings, land, the more spiritual work I do, I'm connecting to higher and higher levels of what is available. And it's quite extraordinary once you work in that way. So there is order in the universe. There is total knowledge of anything. And we can access that only in the present moment. If we're in our head, moving around, you might get some bits of it, some parts of the story, but if you're sitting absolutely connected in your heart, everything will just be given in the present moment in response to a need, depending on who we're working with, where we are. Like I went to Chartres Cathedral in 2002, one of my trips, and I wanted to know the secrets of Chartres Cathedral and everything in the universe and how it's constructed. 4 days solid in the cathedral, and you know what I got? Nothing. And sitting in a cafe over the road, I used to smoke then, and so smoking, drinking, coffee, really kind of. And she said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, I'm not getting it." And she said, "Have you asked?" Duh. And as soon as that connection came, dropping away all the ego, the knowledge and the codes of the cathedral started to come down, literally through the crown of my head. And they were symbols. I didn't understand them, but I knew what they meant. I was being given the codes of the construction of the earth, the cathedral, the geometry, the sacred geometry, why it was located where it was, and so on. And it got so much that I had to even let go of that and let it just drop into the heart. And that totally blew me apart. It was an extraordinary process. Then going back into the cathedral, all that locked in to the cathedral, looked at the South Rose window, and those who have been in front of a window, the effect it had was to start to ratchet and actually reconfigure my DNA, my matrix, my knowledge body. And I could either resist it or allow it to do its job. And a cathedral is a healing center. It's a center of knowledge. They were actually set up as schools of knowledge. So the point where the knowledge is held is always at the seed point. A seed expands into a flower. The code of anything is set off by vibration. So anything we consider, like, let's say a cube, let's say this room was a cube. The seed point, the spota in Sanskrit, holds the genetic code of the shape of cube. So from the center, once you activate it through sound, through intention, that's why in Feng Shui we say place something with intention, because it connects you directly to source, to universal energy. So we say cube, and the radii expand into 8 corners and stop. So that's the code. That angle, that distance, and that creates the cube. And so those corners, those 8 corners, hold the energetic code, or part of the energetic code that's connected to the seed point. The walls are purely the illusion of creation. At another 3D level, the walls are important, not just to keep the weather out, but standing waves. And so the measurement, the distance, the proportions, the geometry again, are crucial for the standing wave vibrations that affect us. And of course, this is how the sacred buildings and the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, all very specific for that standing wave vibration. And of course, the galactic connections to Sirius and other planetary systems. So we have this explosion of the seed point from the center. So here are a few of the geometric tools and the double DNA helix that runs through us. The platonic solids, in fact, they're more space frames. And of course, the rose, which holds the golden mean vibration, the nautilus shell, which is a golden mean spiral, and so on. So the Vesica Pisces, this is actually on the cathedral at Chartres over the doorway. And this is quite common. And in fact, you have the original circle, which is us, unity. And then when we expand to the illusion of duality, we get the two circles moving apart, and we get what's called the Vesica Pisces. It's the birthing canal, the birthing energy process, which brings Christ forward, or that Christ energy forward. So it's the mother womb process. So the circle squared is another cosmological principle where the distance around the square, in fact the inner square here, and the distance around the circle are equal. That means masculine, feminine are in balance. So circle heaven, square earth. This is the Abbot's Kitchen in Glastonbury. Amazing acoustics. Has anyone worked there, been there? Yeah? If you get a chance to go there, extraordinary. We've had several sessions sounding, and the monks are very much alive, and they actually will join in. And I've got recordings where you can hear their voices joining in with your sounding. And in one session, I actually had one of them kind of come in through my back, and my voice dropped another 2 tones lower, which was interesting experience. But I'm used to that sort of thing. So this principle of the circle squared is seen in the Great Pyramid. And here it's beautifully illustrated with this little clip, where we have the base as square, earth. And in fact, you know, there's another pyramid actually reflected under the earth. Yeah, it's as above, so below. And the height actually creates the radius, which gives you the circle. And of course, it has to be equal. Ta-da. Lovely. So that's just how one principle is embedded into a building. Of course, the Great Pyramid has many, many. So another aspect of geometry and the weave, in most sacred buildings, you will find the statement of masculine, feminine, yin-yang, interweaving. And so when we look at Christopher Wren's extension at Hampton Court, we have these arches, and here's a close-up, and what have we got? Male head, male, female, male, female. So we always get this yin-yang weave going through buildings. Salisbury Cathedral, and again, what do we see here? Where do we see the male, female? Yin-yang. Hexagram, which is masculine. The mineral world, hex. Pentagram, the feminine, the golden mean. So we have male, female going right round. Yeah? All sacred buildings will have that code built in. It's the acknowledgement of there's unity and there's duality. So the golden mean harmonic, very powerful. You just rest your attention on the center of that, or put this in a space in the house. Wow, that will unstick energy. The golden mean is the life force. So we see it in the peacock feather, the spreading out, the Fibonacci series, the 1, the 2, the 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and so on. The Fibonacci series, which is the golden mean progression. The fern reflects that, the pine cone, and so on. And of course, the lovely sunflower. So this reflection of the golden mean. And of course, the cactus. I mean, cactuses have had such a bad press with feng shui consultants, yeah? But it actually holds the golden mean spiral. And of course, the church in Valletta is beautiful. But you just stand under something like that. It will remind you of who you are, because we are golden mean beings. This is a church in Venice, most extraordinary depiction of the golden mean in the mosaic. Absolutely beautiful. And of course, Corbusier designed to the golden mean, and this is his church in Ronchamp in France. Beautiful building. So back to Chartres, we have doorways which hold, so that's where Christ in the Vesica Pisces was. But the actual ogive arch, the entrance of a cathedral, is actually designed to the pentagram, which is golden mean. So what happens when you walk through the doorway? You're showered with golden mean harmonics. It actually resets your DNA system. It's a healing center. Beautiful cathedral, very, very powerful. And in fact, you see the 2 spires here. There were actually meant to be, it was designed with 9 spires, and it has 9 gateways. Like the Forbidden City has how many rooms? 9,999. And how many gateways? 9. So the number 9, the final manifestation of the creation, very powerful number, used in the Templar tradition. And here at the Templar towers, at the end of the east end of the cathedral, these stairs go up, and we have 9 windows. And there is actually a stained glass window just here, which is very unusual in a cathedral, that actually depicts the 9. So there are not many cathedrals that actually encode the 9 energy. So that's the Templar Towers, which is always locked. You're never allowed to go in there. But every time I've been, the doors seem to open for some reason. And that's looking up into this tower, and you can't really see it there, but on the screen you can see all the orbs kind of dancing around. So it's a healing rose. It's about resetting. And this is the north window at Chartres, and it's actually designed, it's the only window designed to golden mean spiral. So very powerful. And all you have to do is sit with it and allow that energy to remind you of who you truly are. So the Alhambra in Spain, Granada, very powerful. It's on an incredibly powerful site. You know, the red and white rose energy and so on. And even if you don't understand the language here, if you allow that to come to your energy field, you will know what it means. The code works. You don't need to understand it. So very powerful buildings. So some stories. Okay, this is the one where I went to work with the herd of horses. Absolutely extraordinary. See what's happening here, sitting on this huge bull. Tesoro, his name is. And so it's this land that was actually creating a real problem. The horses were getting sick. The business wasn't running very well. What is the problem? And this was one of the issues. Down on part of the land, it's 320 acres. I don't know what you can see here, but when I look at this, it was a photo taken before the realignment, was actually an ancient native Indian village. And I can still see people walking around there. That's what I do. That's my day job. So you can see there Richard. Richard is a fellow Earthman. And of course, there was a massacre here. And I used to drive every night from the main house down to the gatehouse, which was about a mile, which is why I drove. And halfway down, going past the entrance here, I'd feel like someone got in the back of the car with me. And I thought, no, I've had a bit too much to drink, and late at night. And this kind of went on a few nights until I realized, this is something that needed resolution. And of course, the massacre that happened here, people have been working here, doing ceremonies, but not totally honoring the ancestors. And this is coming back to where we started from. The energy of the ancestors control the land. So who are we to go in and feng shui a house unless we honor that ancestry and get resolution on whatever stories we're running? And of course, he needed, the chief and everybody who was stuck in spirit needed to be released. And we did a ceremony to do that. But before you do that, it's about acknowledging so that they know you know their story, their pain. You need to feel it at some level in order to allow the release to happen. And that's what happened on that last morning before I left. And once you open those gateways and the acknowledgement is there and the honoring is there, that spirit portal just allows that to release. Quite extraordinary process. And some good feedback ever since. There were a couple of other stories on the land, but again connected to ancestry. And in fact, the interesting thing was that the lady who owns it was actually called to this land. Like a house will call you. We think we go and buy a house or rent a house. No, the house calls you. In fact, it's a two-way thing. It's a resonance. My picture, my vibration, my story of life, whether it's this lifetime or often previous lifetimes, is connecting with the soul of a building, and both of them find each other in order to continue your journey and find resolution for whatever's going on in life. But this Indian chief who was at the gateway was actually the client's father in a previous lifetime, and she didn't want to let him go. So she had to release him. And that was pretty tough for her, but she did, because she knew that was holding him back, the villagers back, and of course what the purpose of the land is now, which is healing retreats with horses, with the herd, with the animals. It's an extraordinary process. I'll skip this one, it's quite a long story. This is an interesting one to do with parallel time zones and how confusion can happen. So we go into a house, and I was called here because they couldn't sell the house. Didn't matter what price, it wouldn't sell. And this man had given up his city job to go and be a chicken farmer out in Glastonbury. So why not? And the problem was that the house had been built from the 1600s right up to modern day, and so many stories were happening that the house was confused. It was stuck in about 8 different time zones. It's like going to the theatre and having 8 different stage sets, people in different costumes, all acting and living life at the same time in different time zones, but here now. And you could see them, and like no one was talking to each other, because one time zone doesn't necessarily connect or communicate with another. So as a consultant going in and you're able to see this, you can take a different view and process it. And this is an important thing, that when we build extensions as architects, clients, whatever, we build an extension. The wording is wrong. What happens when we build an extension? Yeah? It's kind of not, I prefer to call it an integration. Let's design an integration and an expansion to the building. Once you create an extension, you're building in a different time zone. Why should that building want to talk to the original soul of the building? Why would it connect in resonance? How does the geometry connect? And so on. So many things to consider when we are expanding a building. So this was expanded, as I say, over about 400 or 500 years, and there were issues. And so it's about resolving each story in each different parallel time zone, releasing the energetics, the spirits that are kind of caught in the matrix, and then allowing, because what was happening was there was a ring of steel around the house that wouldn't let the beautiful energy of the gardens around to come in. And they'd upset the elementals, and when you do that, they will lock in a house and stop it from being nourished. So, and this was, you know, when work done, the house sold within a few weeks. So those interested in buying and selling houses, again, it's about the resolution of what is your story, why was the house calling you, and if you resolve that, it will release you to move on. But if you don't, the house will not let you go. It will hold you prisoner. And I've heard that phrase so many times, you know, from a client. You've got to sort out why you were called. And once you do, and it only needs to take, you know, I worked on a house in Chelsea where they couldn't rent it. Empty for 3 months, it had been abused by foreign tenants, connected the client with the soul of the house, and she realized and heard, I do not want to be abused again. And as soon as she acknowledged that, within 1 hour, 2 estate agents had phoned up and the house was rented that afternoon. That is how quick. But you've got to go right back to the seed point, to the code. You don't have to feng shui 20 rooms in a house. You find the heart, the seed point of the house, and that's where you work it. Breathe it in, release. Yeah? Once you've got the story. So this was another one where in Hope, New Jersey, where the 2 sisters were battling, and long story short, half the family was white, half were Native American Indian. So again, the land, they'd actually built their land on the site of a massacre of a Lenape Indian village. So they were drawn to it to resolve, because one sister was Native American Indian in energetics, and it wasn't till they actually resolved that, and we worked through releasing, going back to the core of the tragedy through sound, and actually sounding in every room, starting from the core. The son had actually died from the negative energy that had been built up there. So extraordinary story. So to go in and just feng shui the house without getting right to the core of what caused the trauma that gets locked into the morphic field, and it calls you for resolution. And so you then go into battle with it. So they did a ceremony and actually created, and there was still a deer trail going through, and suggested they did an altar, which they did, and we doused it and, you know, found where to place it. So all went extremely well after that. This is an interesting, we're kind of getting close to time now, but this was in Hope, New Jersey. And this example is really to illustrate that there was an event up in the attic that nobody would go. Even the dogs, the animals, wouldn't venture up there. So of course I get sent up there first. And it was nasty, but there was a man at the entrance stopping people coming up in a different time zone about 100 years ago, while his mate was whipping one of the young boys, worker boys. But that story was still held in the field. The interesting thing was that barn, something like that, which was just up the road, had burnt down, and they rebuilt this house. The story will not go away just because you demolish a house, you redecorate it, let's freshen it up, or even burn it down. The story is held in the energetic matrix, and the same as the ancestors and the land. That is holding the whole story. And getting back to that seed point is what the resolution is about. This is her, and she'd actually sold the house and then had to rebuy it back. An incredible story. Masonic codes. Most buildings in ancient times, even now, particularly now, are actually coded in the foundations. And this client had a lot of problems. It's an office building. But what I tuned into was that in the four corners, somebody had placed coded objects, whether they were physical or psychic, doesn't matter. They were holding a code. And I told the client this, and he said, "Oh, did you know it was a Masonic building?" I said, "No, but that makes sense." And so you plant these codes because it's part of the whole design of the building. It's what keeps it, running and giving it its purpose. It's like software in a computer. We put a program in, and it won't change its program until you reset it. So this building was now being used as an office, but it was designed for something else. So as professionals going for a change of use, when we go to planners, we are asking for a change of use, but who asks a building, hey, do you want to let go of your past function? So you've got to take it right back. Regress a building is the process. And that can take 5 minutes, it can take 5 hours. You've got to go right back to the seed point and change the code of the building and give it a new function and then bring it back to current time. And plenty of stories, but I have 1 minute, 50 seconds to, and actually, yay, we're done, wow.